Did you hear me?
No, now we can.
Okay. My
Okay, you're good?
no, I gotta go. I will be out for probably 10 minutes.
10 minutes. Okay.
Yep. So go ahead and start. You don't need me.
Sorry, Les. Okay, I'm going to start the work session for February 16th, the Hood River County Board of Commissioners, 4:45. First up is our COVID-19 update. Trish, I assume you're on.
Can you hear me?
Can hear you, but can't see you.
Okay, I'm trying to get my camera on here. Oh, hello. Good afternoon. So I'll just start with some statistics, and I see Dr. Van Tilburg is on as well. I believe Darren is on too. I've seen her name up here. As of this morning, we have had a pandemic total of 1,045 cases. Right now, we have 22 active coronavirus cases in the county. We've had a total of 34 hospitalizations and 29 deaths in Hood River County. So we're continuing with vaccine efforts. We've been doing vaccine clinics every week for the past 5 or 6 weeks. And we've been very productive. We would be more so if we could get more vaccine. We're trying to be patient, but it's hard. We're ready to go. We're ready to be out there and giving lots of vaccines and sharing lots of vaccines with our community partners. And it is frustrating that we're not able to get that vaccine to get it out there. But we have a big clinic scheduled for this Friday, 650 doses at the River of Life Assembly Church, and that'll be second doses. And we are busy setting up and utilizing our new scheduler, which we are hoping will make life much easier for us and have some of that automated processes that will save us a lot of time and effort with the scheduling and making sure that we get recalls in time. So, Darren, if you're on, would you like to talk about the testing events that are coming up next week?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Trish. Hi, everyone. As Trish mentioned, next week we have 3 free testing events partnering with Oregon Health Authority. The 3 events will be Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of next week in the afternoon, evening. I'm happy to pass around the flyers to this group too after this meeting that has the link to register. But Tuesday will be in Cascade Locks at Marine Park Pavilion from 3 to 6. Wednesday will be at Parkdale Elementary, also from 3 to 6. And Thursday will be at River of Life Assembly. Again, we're using their services twice, which is great. And that one will be from 2 to 6, just to accommodate what we think might be more appointments in Hood River. So I'm happy to answer any questions. We will have bilingual services there, and the flyers are also in Spanish. Partnering with some good organizations too, and hope to have a good turnout. So please spread the word. They are free, registration preferred but not required, and I can answer any other questions that come up.
Darren, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
What sort of outreach have you?
So the registration link just went live this morning. Unfortunately, it took quite a while for them to add the site onto the website. So this morning and some of last week, I've been doing email push. Today I went around Hood River and posted some flyers around town. I was thinking to do the same in Parkdale and Cascade Locks. I posted in a couple Facebook groups, and I know Dr. Van Tilburg's health officer Instagram has also promoted it, but I'm very open to any ideas. You know, I'm relatively new to the area. So please let me know if there are groups that you think I should be sending it to. Nextdoor has been really helpful too. They're pushing out the flyers throughout their networks. But yes, I'm very open to any input you have.
Yeah, we have shared it also with the media outlets, radio and paper websites, and we've sent it out through the early childhood and other big networks that we have in the region through the Community Advisory Council and the Columbia Gorge Health Council.
Any other questions for Darren?
Yeah, this is Karen. I have a question around reaching some of our older population. I know we're right now doing 80 and over, but we'll soon be starting to lower the age groups. How are we reaching folks that may have mobility and transportation issues that aren't able to come for an appointment or an opportunity to drive somewhere to get a vaccine? Do we have any kind of reach that is mobile?
I can address that, Commissioner Joplin. So one of the issues that we have right now is the fact that Oregon Health Authority is telling us that we cannot transport vials that have been punctured. So right now we are trying to figure out the best way for us to deliver a vaccine to small groups of people because it comes in vials of 10. I know that Oregon Health Authority is working on that right now. We had thought about somehow partnering with home health or with hospice services to get those out, but they would have the same issues. So Oregon Health Authority has promised to get us more guidance on how to deliver this vaccine in small numbers without having to waste a bunch of vaccine. And just so you're aware, we have been very diligent. We've only had to waste a couple of doses out of over 2,000 doses that we've given since we started getting vaccine. One of those wastages was caused by a faulty needle and syringe set. We do get the needles and syringes from the federal stockpile, and what we get are different with every shipment. So it's quite an assortment, and sometimes they work really well and sometimes they don't. And you just never know what you're getting with those. So we did end up having to waste one dose with a faulty set. And then we did have to waste a dose when it was when we were doing vaccines outside and a big gust of wind came along and blew a vaccine syringe off of a tray, and we wasted that because of contamination. So we've been very diligent. I've been very careful about being judicious about opening new vials towards the end of clinic days, just making sure that we have enough people to give every dose of vaccine to. We do get extra dose of vaccine in many of the vials that we get, and so that will account for the odd numbers that you're seeing in our vaccine delivery. So we're really, really pleased, and our staff have been working really hard. The volunteers have been working really hard to make sure that we're maximizing all the vaccine that we do get.
If I could on that. There was a rumor that came across my desk that Hood River County was wasting vaccine, that vaccines were going unused. And so I contacted Trish. She's clearly debunked that, but I want to make sure that all the commissioners are in the realize that what we just heard is that we're not wasting anything. It's all going into arms, except in these two very unusual situations. So if you hear this rumor, make sure you tell people that is misinformation.
Yes.
They should stop saying it.
That is absolutely not true. We do not waste vaccine. We work extra hard to get people in. We have a standby list at the end of every clinic day that we can get people in within a 15-minute time span to get it so that we don't have to waste vaccine. It's just like gold to us. We're very happy that we're finally feeling like we're doing something positive in this fight against COVID in our community, and we want to maximize every single dose that we have.
I have a question.
Yeah, Trish, this is Mike.
Sorry, Mike.
When we first started the process with the older people, there were I believe three facilities that were providing those, one Community Health, Providence, and Columbia Gorge Family Medicine. In this second week now, third week, are some of the other providers been given any of the vaccines so they can start working with their people?
Unfortunately, we aren't getting as much vaccine as we would like to get, and so we don't have a lot of vaccine to share. We are sharing 250 doses this week, and those are new doses. We are giving 650 doses, which 600 of those are second dose, 50 are new doses on Friday. And so it's very frustrating for us that we're not getting the amount of vaccine that we would like to be getting to really get those vaccines out to our older populations. It looks like going forward, the state has committed to sending Hood River County 300 new doses per week for the next few weeks, which I'm really disappointed with. That's pretty common dosage, a number of doses that they're giving to counties our size, even though we have much more capacity to give a lot more vaccines than what we're getting.
So back to the original question then, some of the personal providers haven't gotten any vaccines at this point then?
That's right. Some of the providers, I believe we have given vaccine this week to One Community Health, and Dr. Van Tilburg, tell me if I'm wrong. One Community Health, Providence, and Columbia Gorge Family Medicine have each gotten some vaccine from us this week. So.
Okay. I know Karen had brought this up a few weeks ago, and we were still wondering about the potential of having a big surge of vaccines potentially in the future. Where are we on that, Trish?
I would imagine that's a few weeks out. What we're looking at is in the next couple of weeks, Janssen's vaccine, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, is going to be applying for emergency use authorization in the next few weeks, I would imagine. That's a single dose vaccine. Right now, we don't have a timeline for delivery for that. We are still hearing from the state that within, a number of weeks, we should start seeing larger amounts of vaccine coming our way. But besides that, I don't have anything in writing that guarantees that at this point. Dr. Van Tilburg, do you have anything to add?
Sorry, I had to step out there for a minute, so I missed a bit there. But yeah, just to reiterate a couple things. I think Ms. Joplin, you asked about, I wasn't sure if you asked about contacting hard to reach people or communicating or getting them vaccine, but we have a very robust, probably one of the most robust communication systems compared to other counties, as I think I spoke about before. Our phone's ringing off the hook. We have every primary care clinic already with lists of all their patients over 65. So that's the beauty of electronic medical records. So all of the major lists, all of the major clinics have lists of people. And so, as Ms. Elliott said, those few hard to reach people, we already kind of have multiple ideas in the works for that. We're right about at the end of this week, if we get all of our vaccine, we'll be at 6,000, over 6,000 doses of vaccine delivered in our county. And I think the question about who is giving vaccine, Providence, Columbia Gorge Family Medicine, One Community Health, Summit, and Safeway are all giving vaccines this week. And we probably have 2 more clinics coming online next week, but largely we're just waiting for vaccine. We have the capability of giving 2,200 doses per week in our current system. So we're just waiting for vaccine.
Yeah. So we did hear just late this afternoon that Safeway was scheduling vaccine for people who were eligible. Darren, were you able to get any specific information?
Yeah, I spoke briefly on the phone with the pharmacy manager who said they only got 100 doses this week and they're all spoken for, and they don't know what the guarantee is for what they'll get moving forward. So it sounds like I don't know how much notice they were given, but it sounds like it was a pretty quick turnaround.
Yeah.
Are the pharmacies working on specifically just people calling that meet the criteria, or are they responding to primary care physicians? How does that work?
It looks like they are screening people on their website for eligibility, and so it is self-referral. I would imagine that their word of mouth, travels quickly, and that's how we found out. As somebody called us and said, "Oh, did you know? By the way, I was able to schedule a COVID vaccine at Safeway today," and so yeah, that's great news. I hope it continues to come into our area, into our region, and becomes easier for people to access.
So if I could ask, right now, as an example, we are eligible for vaccination, and I believe census number said there's something about 1,000 folks in that category living in our county currently. Some of them have primary care physicians, some of them have a relationship with the pharmacy, some of them don't have any of that. If you're in that category, what are you doing today? How are you getting in line? How are you getting the vaccine?
Well, and actually, as of people this week, it's age 75 and up are eligible starting this week. So people need to call their primary care doctor. If they don't have a primary care doctor, their pharmacy, they can talk to their neighborhood pharmacist. They can call community clinics. Most of our providers are offering some opportunity for people outside of their patient empanelment to schedule appointments. I know One Community Health does. We do when we have vaccine available. So we'll just keep plugging along.
So I understand that this week, 75 and over are eligible, and is it next week that it becomes 70 and over? Is it 5 years a week? But we're not able to vaccinate anything near that rate. So I guess my fear here is that we have plenty of people who are still 80 and above who have not yet been vaccinated, and they may just be lost in the rush. They're less capable of advocating for themselves in some ways. So we're doing
that's why we've been really working with the providers to make sure that they have their patient lists ready. We're also, happy to take calls from caregivers, and we do get lots of calls from family who are providing care for people who are in those age groups, and getting them scheduled however and wherever we can.
So are the 80 and above being prioritized over the 75 to 80, or is it?
Well, that I'm not completely clear on. So I would imagine, anybody over this age of 75 right now is eligible. We will certainly ensure that we are advocating for those people who have less ability to get in or to make an appointment on the computer. We have our phone lines are now open and taking calls for people to call who don't have internet access and need help scheduling either with us or with other people.
Can I make a brief comment on that? Is that I would just echo what Trish said, what Ms. Elliott said, in that all of the primary care clinics are going to try to prioritize 80 plus first. It's not going to be perfect. So if they have, Providence is going to get 230 doses in this Friday. If they do, 200 in 80 plus and 30 and 75 plus, that's just the way it's going to be. But we're going to try to follow the sequencing plan as much as possible. And as soon as our phone line, our call center is up, we're gonna, I think we will collect a list of those people over 65 who don't have a PCP. And so we'll get the list. Everybody's going to get vaccinated. We probably, as Ms. Elliott said, do some of those in the health department. Some of them will probably offset to one community health. Everybody's going to get vaccinated. Everybody who wants a vaccine is going to get vaccinated. So it's just, we're largely waiting on vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the reason I think of the model of airplane boarding, where they say, they start announcing group 1 should board now, group 2, group 3, group 4. They're announcing group 3, group 4 before group 1 and 2 have even gotten on the plane, but they're at least in a queue so that they're ordered, so that the line is theoretically largely in order. And I'm not sure that we have that queue in place so that the folks are being vaccinated in the appropriate order. I'm not sure. I mean, I think you might have addressed that, but I'm not sure I followed that.
So the primary care providers definitely have their empanelment prioritized, and it's easy for them to do that because they know who their clients are. We don't necessarily know who they are, and so when someone calls us and says, I'm 79 years old, I want to get a flu vaccine, or I want to get a COVID vaccine, can I have an appointment? And we have an opening appointment, we're going to schedule them. So that's, we don't know these people like their primary care do. But one thing we can do is encourage them to go through their primary care provider. And that's why we are committed to providing vaccine to those primary care providers that do take care of those patients.
Do we have any our elderly population that have PCPs? Is it more than 50%? Is it very high, or?
I don't have that. I can get that.
It's probably around 85 to 90%.
I'm not looking for an accurate number, just a guess. That's excellent. Thanks.
We know
that's encouraging.
We know exactly how many people over 80, over 75, and over 65 are in Providence Internal Medicine, Providence Family Medicine, Summit, One Community Health, and Columbia Gorge Family Medicine. So all of those tiers, those airplane boarding groups, as you explained, those are already lined up for the majority of the main clinics. the 3 or 4 smaller clinics that I've been in contact with already have that information too. So everybody's lined up, ready to go. We're just waiting.
Great. So it's not perfect, but it's roughly the way I'm imagining it. Thank you.
It's pretty near about as perfect as we can get it. I mean, it's a really fine system that I think Ms. Elliott has built, and we're ready to go, and we have everybody lined up, and we're just waiting.
I just mean there's some people who are going through pharmacies, some people who are going through the health department. In that case, you don't have them in your record system. So you're taking them at their word for what their age is, and you're not necessarily stacking them the same way that the PCPs are.
Well, and we really haven't gotten too deeply into that population either. I mean, most of the folks that we've vaccinated outside of first responders, healthcare providers, and teachers are those people that are receiving in-home care and or are caregivers. And so those are the populations that we've been providing most of our services for. I would imagine that, like Dr. Van Tilburg said, that the majority of our seniors do have primary care. What I'm concerned about is people whose primary care may be inaccessible. Maybe they see primary care in Portland or in Vancouver, and it's not as easy for them to get there.
Yeah, I guess just to piggyback on the conversation, because I've just been through this with my grandmother who's 91. And the issue that she had is she contacted her primary care physician and they didn't have any more of the vaccine schedule. And so what they said is, well, you can wait until we get more vaccine, but that was going to happen after the next change in the age range situation. And I think that that's still not an issue, but I think this really could be an issue that will compound as we move forward into the larger chunks of ages. And so what they recommended she do is do everything she could to find a vaccine before it moved into the next position, which is kind of what Arthur was speaking to a little bit. And I appreciate that Dr. Van Tilburg said that they're going to try to prioritize those folks in the next round, but it seems like we're right on the edge of something that could be a little bit. I know it's not you guys' fault, it's the schedule that's been put together by the state, but it's just a little bit, it is concerning, and I think it's something that we do everything we can to avoid it being having those folks get squeezed out. And
I fully agree. I fully agree. I was really hoping that, I mean, we did request 3,000 doses to receive 3,000 doses in 3 weeks. And I was basically told that wasn't going to happen. So
this is another experience similar to Bob's experience is my mother, who was 86, a patient of Providence. She received a notification through her MyChart last Tuesday and was notified with a direct link to schedule a shot for that Friday, which inadvertently was canceled due to snow and delayed to this coming Friday. But it was a very easy, simple process. The link was straight direct. You pick a time, they're in 10-minute increments, very quick and easy. She was notified ahead of time by 5 days. I was really impressed. I thought it was great.
This is Les. I think the issue you're going to run into is the folks who are not savvy on internet, and I would put my parents in that category because my dad's 79 and is trying to figure out how he gets scheduled. So he's making phone calls because he doesn't use a computer. And so there is that older generation, that demographic, there is a disconnect in terms of using electronics, and people don't answer the phone, which I understand because you guys are busy, the pharmacy at Safeway is busy. And so I think that's another part of it, unless there's a family member sitting there shepherding them through the process, which I don't go into my parents' house, so I'm struggling a bit to help them. It gets to be an issue.
Yeah, it definitely does.
So,
it's very frustrating.
Mr. Perkins, so we have a phone line that's answered. We have a phone line in an informational line in Spanish and an informational line in English. And then we have a scheduling line, and we have already helped hundreds of people schedule their appointments. So that's a great problem that you brought up. We've already addressed that. And so.
Okay, that's probably my fault. I'd understood that they weren't supposed to call the health department.
They're not supposed to call the main number, but if people are eligible for a vaccine, we can help them schedule. But
Okay,
that's if
perfect.
we're not, the health department's not vaccinating 80 plus patients. Those are all being done by the primary care clinics.
Got it.
So keep in mind, we only have 200 vaccines in our county right now
Yeah.
for 80 plus. That's all we got.
Yeah. No, that's helpful to know that they can call that, not directly to the health department, but a separate line.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think the experience that we've seen from the parents and grandparents of commissioners should, let us know that, number one, that you folks are doing a great job, but number two, there's an awful lot of communication that's still needed. And I understand it's just starting to open up to different age ranges. And I know we're going to hear a different story next week, but it sounds like all of us have a lot of work to do between now and then.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Trish, I have one question on the numbers. You say maybe next week we'll get 300. So is a place like Safeway, is that it? That 300 part of what they're getting, or did they get it separate from you?
No, theirs was allocated completely separate from us. My understanding is also that One Community Health will be receiving 200 doses per week. That's not just for Hood River, but that's for Hood River, Wasco and Sherman counties. So they'll be sharing those 200 doses. And I believe that's starting the week of the 22nd. They're going to be receiving that for the short term anyway, weekly. And so we are going to be getting at least 300 doses of new vaccine, of dose 1 vaccine every week, starting the week of the 22nd. And so we know that we can count on at least being able to parse out that much to the primary care providers, which is not much. But One Community Health was also going to be getting some. It would be great if Safeway were to continue to get vaccine too, so that, it would be great to be able to get as many people in these age groups vaccinated as soon as possible.
Well, Trish, I said earlier, if you ever needed me to do something to talk to certain people, let me know. I don't know if it helps, but I know a lot of counties are doing that, where they're getting their person that talks to the governor and starting to talk about things when things don't look like we're getting our fair share. If you think that's the case, let me know, please.
Well, of course I think that, and it can't hurt, right? So I think that we're ready. We're ready to provide this on a wide scale basis. Lots of vaccines per week, lots of vaccines per month. And all we need is the vaccine to do that with.
Okay, thank you.
I think this clinic you're doing, 650 folks at the church this week. Please, that sounds like a great, basically dry run for what we're going to be doing on a regular basis in coming months. So please let us know how that works, and I'm really excited to see that volume happening. And if we can do that, then you're right. We're just waiting for the vaccine to come in.
All right. If you're interested in volunteering for that clinic, let Belinda Balla know. And you don't have to be there for the whole time. It's going to be a long day, I will tell you that. But we went and did we did a walkthrough of the facility today, which we've used it in the past for flu vaccine clinics, but we're very excited to we like to test ourselves and push ourselves and see how many we can do and how smoothly we can do it. And it's been going really well. And I have to say 240 doses is pretty ho-hum now. So now we're going to try 650. We'll see how that goes.
Wow. Okay. Any other questions for Trish or Darren or Chris?
Chair, this is Karen. I have more questions for Darren, but they're unrelated to the health department and vaccines. Would you like me to ask that now, or maybe?
Sure, we got a couple minutes.
Okay. So Darren, hopefully part of your job description was to do some liaison work with our legislators and to kind of keep us informed of any potential additional business resources for economic pitfalls from the COVID pandemic. And I was wondering if you'd had any opportunity or if you'd embarked on some of that work with either the Nate Stice perhaps, or our local legislative representatives, any conversations around any additional relief that may be coming, or anything around kind of our business community and the economics of this pandemic?
Yeah, that's a great question. Nate Stice has been a great resource for me, and he got me connected with Jessica Mata, who I may mess this up, but it's the Mid-Columbia Economic Resilience Group. So I've been able to be a part of the last meeting that they had, and I think that'll be a great opportunity for me to share anything that comes up down the pipeline with local businesses. But I also know that there was a relief package possibly coming to the city, but beyond that, I'm doing a little bit of research, but I really haven't been connected with any legislative. If there's anyone you'd like to connect me with, I'd be happy to speak with them and see how we overlap.
Well, I would recommend Anna Williams and Chuck, just to introduce yourself and what you're looking for, and if they have any ideas to keep you in line or informed so that they can know who to pass information on to once they receive anything.
Great, thank you.
Darren, this is Mike. I'll forward you their email addresses so you can get them.
Oh, perfect, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Darren, just one for different ways to get news out in the community, like concerning the testing thing. There is it's funny to say, but there's a chat room called Hood River Weather, where people sit around and talk about all sorts of things. I just checked to see if they had any mention of your clinic, and they do not yet. So let them know. And in fact, I can introduce you to the guy who keeps the chat room. He can put up a sticky note on the chat saying that you have this clinic running. It's a percent of the population. It's not everybody, but especially when we have a snowstorm, pretty much everyone at some point will go there, and you can get in touch.
It's a surprisingly effective medium, actually.
I was going to say that's something I wouldn't have thought of. So great.
No, the Hood River Weather chat is one of those places that gets information out pretty quickly. So,
what platform is it on? Is it just
it's a home build site. It's hoodriverweather.info.
Hoodriverweather.info. Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, and appreciate all your hard work. Keep it going, and we'll talk to you in a couple of weeks or so. And Trish, again, if you need me to do something, let me know.
Please do. Thank you.
Okay, next up on our agenda is the 2021 CEDS prioritization of Mid-Columbia Economic Development Update. Jessica Mata.
Hi, thank you everybody for letting me be here. Thank you, Chair Oates. So actually I get to do a two-part presentation today. One is the annual prioritization of your economic development project list. And then I also asked to just take a little bit of time to give you an update on MCED. So the list you did receive in your packet, and as a reminder, I know that Commissioner Babbitts is new, but I believe he knows about this process. But so each of the 5 counties in the Mid-Columbia region develop a prioritized list of their economic development projects. And those then feed into a regional prioritization list in the Mid-Columbia Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, or we call it the CEDS. But even just the prioritized county list is helpful for project proponents as they are seeking, applying for applications for funds from outside entities, and it also just helps shed attention on the projects within the county. So the way that the list is developed in Hood River County, the Hood River Economic Development Group, so we reach out to the partners in the county and ask them to submit their projects to MCED. and the Economic Development Group meets and creates a draft prioritization for presenting to you for your final approval. You could move things around on the list, it's your prerogative, but so the list as has been submitted is here before you, and Jeff can attest, attending those meetings. It is a little bit of a give and take with the different entities, talking about, how important is it for you to be on the list? Do you need to be at the top? Do you need to be just somewhere? And a lot of folks recognize just being on the list at all is very important. Sometimes being number one is significant, but really just being on the list is important. So I'll just run through the projects briefly. The first one, the Port of Cascade Locks, the Bridge of the Gods maintenance, and that's well, I'll just list them really and see if you have questions. Project number 2 is affordable housing, and this has in the past has been a joint project between the city of Hood River and the county. And this one's talking about the Rand Road and additional acquisition. Hood River Lot 1 from the Port of Hood River is building up the infrastructure to get Lot 1 developable. The City of Hood River's elevated sewer line project is number 4. That's on the south side of I-84. The Columbia Gorge Community College and partners really put together kind of at the last minute this agricultural technical program that's being discussed for the Barrett Park property. Number 6, the Port of Cascade Locks, their recreation facilities and enhancement projects. Number 7 is Hood River's waterfront stormwater line replacement. 8 is the county's the treatment of wastewater. It's listed as the county. Part of it, a lot of it is really talking about the Odell Sanitary District, but then also just a regional discussion on plans for the future of sludge and land application of biosolids. Number 9, the intersection improvements in the city of Hood River at a couple intersections. And then 10 is the Port of Hood River's, the bridge. The next piece is on the bridge replacement. The other projects on here were listed or just for additional information, but they're not in any particular order. Are there any questions about the projects or their order?
I have, to start with, I need to make a disclosure. Several years ago, I was contracted by a company called Key Development to do an economic analysis of Lot 1, which I've done. The board has subsequently done 2 additional economic analyses of Lot 1. So I have some knowledge of that. I want to be clear that I have no economic interest in that. I have not done any work with this company for several years. So I have no economic interest in the outcome of this. So I would like to know, I'm surprised to see that number 10 is a new bridge and number 3 is development of Lot 1. And I also know as a commissioner, as a city council member, item number 3 has come to you as an urban renewal request on a couple of occasions and received sort of mixed attention from the city for urban renewal dollars. So can you kind of talk me through, do you know anything about why a new bridge is considered less of a priority than development of more light industrial property on Lot 1, and whether the city has any interest in Lot 1 from an urban renewal point of view? Sorry, it's a big question.
So it's number 10 actually, because in the heat of the meeting of, negotiating where projects landed, so Michael McElwee is the chair of the group, and he said, let's put aside the bridge for a moment. And we finished the meeting, and then afterwards, he and I both realized the bridge, actually, we forgot to put the bridge on the list. So at that point, we reached out to the group, and the project at number 10, which was the Port of the City of Cascade Lock City Hall, he said, we don't really need to be on the list. So they just went in at number 10. So Michael would say that just being on the list was helpful. I don't necessarily think that being 10, that the bridge is any way less important to them than Lot 1. And I would say what the plans for lot 1 right now is, I know he's working on an application to the EDA and maybe some Business Oregon partners for to extend Anchor Way, I believe is so there are some applications in development that he's working on that would benefit from being on the list this year. So I think if the county wanted to move the bridge up the list, then I think that would be okay. But that's why it's at the bottom.
Okay, if I could follow up on that. I understand that a lot of this prioritization is sort of a give and take, where if you got number 1 last year, you're not getting number 1 this year. And it goes, instead of what's most important for the community, it's this slot is the Port of Cascade Locks. This slot might be the city of River. This might be the city of Cascade Locks. So it's not necessarily saying that what's number 1 is more important than number 2, but what's number 1 should be the most important for that agency that submitted number 1. Is that a fair characterization of how this process works?
I agree. Yes, I think so.
Okay. So for the record, I want to get out a concern that I have with the lot 1 prioritization. And that's that specifically, there's an interplay between development of lot 1 and the financing of the bridge, which I'm afraid that people don't fully understand. And what that interplay is that if the development on lot 1 very likely involves debt on the bridge, and debt on the bridge affects the ability to finance the bridge, to finance a new bridge. So I personally have serious concerns about any progress in developing lot 1 that may adversely affect the bridge replacement. So I just want to get on the record at saying that. I want to share that with the other commissioners so that it is a complicated description. I'm happy to go in greater detail to what the relationship between these things is. But I do want to get it out there that I have a concern that putting lot 1 on this list at a high priority could in fact make it difficult or more difficult to finance development of a new bridge.
Arthur, to follow up on that a little bit, during some of the discussions on the bridge, they were talking about the need for a launching site for the development of the new bridge. And that was one of the areas they were looking at. Now, that's not what you're referring to here, though, is it?
Not at all, no. In a nutshell, is that if you are engaged in a public-private partnership to finance the bridge, which is certainly one of the things that's being considered, that's a financial arrangement whereby you effectively sell the current bridge to a company, and the company then develops a new bridge and takes tolls on the new bridge to pay for that project. You can't sell a bridge that has debt on it. No private party, none of the PPP partners would be interested in engaging in a transaction with a bridge that has encumbrances on it. So if the port does infrastructure development on lot 1, that means that they're intending to do further development on lot 1. That development is very likely financed by debt which is taken, which is related to, which is backed by the bridge, future bridge tolls, those same future bridge tolls which are necessary to pay for the future bridge. So there's that interplay which has me very concerned. I'm sure that I'm oversimplifying it, but I know that there have been discussions after commission meetings about the need to get lot 1 development underway before they lose the toll stream from the bridge. That's troubling to me.
I think that's a great point. And I think the SEDS process brought it up. I don't know how specific. I mean, having been through this process before and prioritizing what's on the list and seeing that if you need something on the list, you can amend the list and put it to the top if you need to. I don't know how important the rankings on the list is at all. I think the bigger concern is the actual issue you're bringing up, Commissioner Babbitt, and we should probably engage the port directly and ask them what they're thinking there. with respect to how they want to move forward, because having been through this enough times and seeing things get added midstream, I really don't like Jessica said, if it's on the list, that's going through the rankings and changing that stuff, because even things that aren't on the list can shoot to 1 if there's funding available. So, I mean, anyway, I agree with what you're saying. It's just I don't know. It seems like during the SEDS process is odd.
If I might add, this does not address Commissioner Babbitt's concern, but it is, or it was a part of the discussion amongst the group as we reviewed these projects and discussed them. One of the things, not the only thing that's talked about when these projects get on a list, is whether there's some immediate or high probability that outside money will be asked for to come in to help fund the project. And that's one of the things that we talk about. And so the reason why I believe, or I recall, Lot 1 was sort of moved up is there's the ability to get outside money for that project. And so it sort of moved up the list. The bridges have historically been towards the top of the list, and the reason why the port felt that the bridge would move down the list is because there's no immediate opportunity for funding for the bridge, or at least not one that they're pursuing. Whereas with Lot 1, there is, in their mind, there was more of an immediate opportunity to get outside money. So from their perspective, they wanted Lot 1 moved up and the bridge moved down.
And that's
I don't know
precisely,
if that helps at all, but that's part of the conversation that I recall.
no, in fact, it makes it worse, which is exactly, that's exactly my concern, that in the rush to, there's an interest in seeing Lot 1 developed, which will possibly foreclose on a financing path for the bridge. And it's this, I agree with Commissioner Benton that the order that things are on this list is not something I'm particularly concerned about. I would like to know that as a commission, that we believe that development of a new bridge is a high priority, and is certainly a higher priority property development on Lot 1, and that therefore we would not want to see Lot 1 development get in the way of bridge financing. That's all I want to throw out there, and I'll be quiet for the rest of it.
So this is Karen. So Bob, was it you that replaced Commissioner McBride on the bridge, the group around replacing the bridge?
Yeah, that's correct.
So is this maybe something that you could have some conversation about? So maybe the commissioners could better understand what some of those contingencies might be for future bridge replacement?
Yeah, and I'll go over this in my report. We actually had a meeting about exactly what Commissioner Babbitt is talking about. Moving, and I think that this is actually front and center with where that working group is, because up until recently, I don't think that the P3 or the public-private partnership has been seriously considered by the group, and I think that hoping that changes. We've got a debrief on our, but I'll go over everything during my report. But yeah, no, that's definitely it's a serious concern. What Arthur's bringing up is a serious concern. If our community is interested, in my opinion, if our community is interested in replacing that bridge, if we take the public-private partnership out of the equation as an option, I believe it basically kills our opportunity for a bridge anytime in the near future. And by near, I mean within the next 20 years. So
well, that would be important for all of us to know and to be aware of, and have an open meeting and an open conversation about it. The fact that it's on the list, is less concerning, but maybe the prioritization or the way it actually lands in the future may be of concern for the community.
Yeah,
At this point, go ahead, Bob.
Well, I would just like to say that, yeah, no, that's absolutely, you're correct. And I was unaware of the association specifically between, and what the port's desires were with respect to Lot 1. I wasn't aware that the development of that and their plans included indebting themselves and tying that to the bridge revenues, which is what Arthur suggested. Our conversations haven't revolved around that at all at the bridge meetings. They haven't even touched on that issue at all. And so Arthur's bringing that to light right now. but I just didn't want to get hung up in the SEDS process as part of this. I think that it is absolutely a concern, though, what he's brought up today.
Okay, from what you said, Bob, and from what a couple of other commissioners have mentioned, that they don't believe, or I want to make sure we're all on the same page, that this categorization from 1 to 10 is all that important. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I've been on the SEDS process for I was on the board a long time ago, and yeah, things move around. Like Bob said, I mean, when an opportunity comes along, it really doesn't matter. It's just getting on the list. But I did have a question for Jessica. So if I'm remembering correctly, the elected members who sit on MCED for the agencies that are partners in MCED used to be involved in the SEDS ranking.
So you will, you as a MCED board member will be involved with the regional ranking. So what will happen is now we'll have 5 county lists that we integrate into a top 10 for Oregon and a top 10 for Washington. And so the MCED board is involved in that. So we'll pick some of these and make it to, especially those projects that are of regional significance. So in that case, the Hood River Bridge might end up being on that list, and maybe one of the higher ranked ones might not, for example.
Okay.
Jessica, can you touch bases with me a little bit here on who's all involved with the Hood River Economic Development Group that made these listings?
Sure, it's the staff level leaders of the 2 ports, the cities, the county, the school district, the college, the chambers involved, I believe, and then MCED. MCED is there, so we have a small contract with Hood River County to provide some staffing for it, and then I'm also just there as MCED.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, I should have made another disclosure. Several years ago with a P3, a company which was preparing a P3 proposal. I have no financial interaction at all with them anymore, but needed to get that out there too. Thank you.
One thing did strike me when I went through this whole list, and I guess it doesn't matter a whole lot, but I'm just going to say it. There's no way I would put the Pacific Crest Trail link for $28 million as my #1 priority. It just wouldn't be there. And Bridge 10th. I might reverse those.
You know, that's sort of one of the funny things. I think Jessica touched on that. A lot of it has to do with knowing that there are opportunities. I think as I understand it, there's some pretty hot opportunities for Cascade Locks to actually snag money to do that. And so they're going after it, and I applaud them for doing that. Some of these other things are far more speculative.
Good to know. Any other questions or comments for Jessica?
So now I would like to do just the general update on MCED. I do have slides, but I'm not positive if I can share.
Yes.
Looks like the button is grayed out.
Well, I didn't.
Jessica wants to share.
Oh, yes. Okay. I'm sorry. Jessica, just a moment. I didn't hear you. My apologies.
Okay,
I'll turn you into the presenter.
Okay, and this is going to be, of course, new. This is a new format for me. If I hit are you seeing just the slides? Okay.
Yes.
So thank you. So thank you again for letting me just take a little time to share a reminder of MCED. So again, I'm MCED's executive director. I find that we do so much. Sometimes I don't have a good 30-second elevator speech, so This is just a good opportunity to remind you of all the things that we're doing and also to share some current activities with you. So, you know, we've been around since 1969 to promote the creation of family wage jobs, diversification of the economic base, and the growth, development, and retention of businesses and industry in the 5-county district, which are the counties you see here: Hood River, Wasco, Sherman, Lickitat, and Skamania. And there are approximately 85,000 residents and numerous communities. Our board is governed by a 21-member board representing the counties, the cities, the two, a port from each side, chamber from each side, and a number of private sector representatives. Our 3 areas, our work really falls into 3 major focus areas: business assistance, technical assistance, and regional coordination. And I will, again, I'll kind of share a reminder of what falls into those 3 overall, and then just, you know, specifically what we're doing right now under those. On the business assistance one, so lending, we do have a number of business lending programs where that we manage: the Oregon Investment Board, MCED's own loan funds, and now also Mount Hood Economic Alliance. Through those, we've offered COVID relief loans to businesses. We've also provided deferrals and interest-only payments for current clients. We haven't had a lot of interest in COVID relief loans so far, but the types of businesses in Hood River County, for example, that we fund include things like the Renewal Workshop, Mountain View Orchards, Lost Lake Resort, Dog River Pet Supply, Freem, lots of businesses, really. And we also have an Attainable Housing Loan Fund that was created by the Regional Solutions Funds. And an example in Hood River County of where that's been useful is the Mike Kitts and Doug Beveridge 18-unit development off of Belmont. On the business trainings, we've created some business resiliency tools after the Eagle Creek fire, and those were useful again this time for COVID. We've also provided a number of trainings through the economic resiliency team, including adapting to the guidance from the governor's office, preparing for outbreaks. We've also have a current series of business trainings that we're doing right now in partnership with the Small Business Development Center, and then also in Spanish in partnership with the Next Door. And those are, that was funded by a grant from the Business Oregon and USDA to focus on how to get your business online, how to market online, how to get ready for lending. On the industry cluster development work, currently that's really focused on the Gorge Technology Alliance, so helping grow the tech businesses here, and then also some renewable energy work. Prior associations that MCED has supported included the Wine Growers, the Cider Makers, Arts and Culture Alliance, and healthcare. And maybe our COVID-19 business grant program really fits under this business assistance category. We have distributed $2.6 million from 2 Business Oregon grant rounds, the Wasco County grant, and then also very appreciative of being able to work with you on the Hood River County grant program. We've also assisted the City of the Dalles and Northern Wasco PUD in administering their COVID relief programs. On the, again, stop me if, I'm just gonna keep going, but stop me if you have a question. And I can't see everybody's faces, so. On the technical assistance area of our focus, we do support for grant administration for complex federally funded projects. This includes, the picture here is Mid-Columbia Center for Living's new facility in the Dalles, which was funded by a community development block grant. We also administer grants from USDA, the Economic Development Administration, DEQ. So we've done other work, for example, with Crystal Springs and a number of projects with Cascade Locks. That's an area where we can really focus and help our partners get their projects done. The economic development services we provide is, especially on the Oregon side, where we serve as the county level economic development staff for Sherman County and Wasco County. We work with their commissioners and their communities really to keep some of those economic development and community development projects moving forward. Under this category is also where I put our support for the economic development group, the Hood River Economic Development Group that I mentioned, and then Hood River Enterprise Zone. Project management includes our support for the Hood River Energy Council, as well as some of our mobility management services. that promote forms of transportation beyond single occupancy vehicles. And new this year, it's Commute Options is a benefits program that encourages employees to travel to work not using their single occupancy vehicle. And there are gift cards and things that they can win. This is a new benefit in Hood River County. And Kathy Fitzpatrick will probably be in touch with Jeff, if she hasn't already, to see if your employees would want to sign up for it. On the regional coordination side, pieces that we do, so this is really where we are able to focus on challenges or opportunities impacting communities across the 5 counties, such as renewable energy development. On the broadband access piece, we help coordinate the Gorge Broadband Consortium, which is a group that meets periodically to discuss ways that we can address and underserved areas of the region. On the transportation coordination across the region, our regional transportation work has long been serving as staff for the Gorge TransLink Alliance, which pulls the 5 county transit providers together for better coordination, shared marketing, and outreach. In 2019, what you see on the screen is they launched the new website that has a really great trip planning app that helps coordinate across all of the different services. And over the last year, they've really been, this group's been focusing on sharing information about COVID-19 best practices, as well as the Gorge transit strategy. So the regional transit strategy that's in development builds on recommendations of existing transit plans to establish a foundation for a comprehensive strategy for the 5 county region. Right now, we're in phase 1 development, which is focused on strengthening partnerships and completing some foundational work and setting a high level regional vision. And then phase 2, we are in grant applications right now, hopefully funding that to really look at the next steps of a regional transit vision. On the regional planning side, this is where we get to do a lot of the fun cross-county work, the economic resiliency team that's been mentioned, which I've been co-convening with Governor Brown's Regional Solutions Office. And that's where we've been having staff level meetings, sharing information, and coordinating efforts around COVID-19 resilient recovery. We also received some CARES money from the Economic Development Administration to help the region respond and recover from COVID-19. So our work thus far has been funded through that CARES money, and that fund will also help us work over the next 18 months on tasks like business support, broadband assessments, community facility support, what the community needs to help us recover. And then of course the SEDS, we were just talking about the project list, which is updated every year. And that is an appendix to the larger strategy, which you see on the screen, is developed every 5 years together with regional stakeholders to really provide a robust framework for community-based economic development activities in the region. We are starting this year on the update on the big 5-year update for the 2022 plan with a series of community meetings, and here they are presented for you. So hopefully you've received some notifications already about the meetings. The first one's going to be on March 31st. And of course, we're starting these out virtually and hoping at some point to go in person. In the past, they were a great opportunity to really showcase our different counties and the industry, the economic strengths of each of them. And so we're hoping to be able to move around the region in the future, but at least we're starting virtually. So again, it's pulling really the community partners together to talk about for this region, really, what do you see as where we should be going over the next 5 years? So each of these meetings kind of digs into a piece of the plan. New this time, we are gonna kick it off with a discussion focused specifically on economic impacts of COVID-19 and really setting the tone for resiliency and what would a more resilient economic development strategy being for the region. So really that was it. Your call to action is to participate in those strategy development sessions. And here's a link here. We can also get information to you on that. And then just here to answer any questions. I will stop sharing so you can. Are there any questions about?
Any questions for Jessica?
Hi, Jessica. This is Bob. You know, I can't remember when it was now, a couple of years ago when we busted up Mid-Columbia Council of Governments, and the transportation component kind of landed in McKed's lap, and then I quickly jumped off the McKed board so I didn't have to deal with the repercussions. Can you let me know, I mean, give us an update on how well that's working?
How's that going?
Is that, has that been a pain to deal with? Is it a positive thing? How's that working out?
Which part, you leaving McKed or?
I already know that was a good call. Everybody benefits from that, but I just was wondering about the transportation component we shouldered.
Right, yeah, and I didn't fit that into the presentation. So what it was is we took over the Link public transportation for Wasco County. So like Kat has here, we operate the Link in Wasco County. It's been going really well. We actually moved our office into the transit center back behind Home Depot, which for folks that had been to the old McKed office, this is a much needed improvement. But it's been good. We've been integrating our staff, and with the House Bill 2017, the statewide transportation improvement fund dollars that were specifically for transit, it's really allowed us to kind of like CAT, but in different ways, to really expand the transit program in Wasco County. So it is going well.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions for Jessica? Okay, well, Jessica, I thank you very much for the information. It's always a pleasure to have you come and talk to us, and we really appreciate you being a partner that works really well with us. And thank you for all your hard work. And we will be talking about that list in our work session action items during the regular meeting. I don't know if you're planning on staying for that or not. But...
Okay, well, thank you.
Can I say one thing, Mike?
Sure.
Just want to point out, Jessica's been in the director position, I think, for a year now. Is that correct, Jessica?
Almost a year.
Yeah. So time has flown by, and I just have to say she stepped in and filled Amanda's shoes really well. So really appreciate having her there.
Thank you, Commissioner Perkins. Thank you for your time tonight.
Okay. This time we're going to stop our work session and head into our business meeting, which is supposed to start right now. This time I'll call the business meeting to order for the Hood River County Board of Commissioners for this February 16th, 2021. Additions and our deletions from the agenda. I do have a couple things. We were sent an additional consent item with the consent process. I'm going to put that, instead of putting it in with the rest group, I'm going to put it afterwards, right up immediately afterwards, and we'll do another consent agenda, just that one item that was brought in. Also, it was asked to we talk about the reports on the potential for severance tax on our timber sales, and I planned on talking about that in my reports. So when we get to our reports, I think we can talk about it in there. It's something we need to talk about, and some information. Anything else that needs to be added or deleted from the agenda? Okay, this time I'll ask, are there any conflicts or potential conflicts of interest? Hearing none, this time we'll see if there's any public comment. Heidi, do we have anyone registered for public comment?
Chair Oates, I don't believe so this evening. Thank you.
Okay. Reports. First up, County Administrator Jeff Axel.
Great, thank you. I have a few items this evening. Within the packet is just a follow-up item that shows budget numbers from the Sheriff's Office that reflect the capacity to hire one of the two positions that are vacant at this time. The deputy position will be revisited between now and the end of the fiscal year. I appreciate the Sheriff's assistance in getting those numbers together so that we could do the report out for the board and assess the capacity within that budget to pay for those positions. Within the packet also, I included the draft goals and actions and the vision statement for the strategic plan for the next 5 years. I wanted to get that in front of the board at a staff level. We had a meeting to talk about those things, or at least initially talk about them, and we will be doing so again at the next staff meeting in March. And I want the board to know that as we go through budgets, we will be looking to direct resources towards those action items with a specific emphasis probably on the top 3 goals and the actions contained therein, but it will also depend on what it is going on currently in some of the departments. But I did want to get those in front of the board as soon as possible, which was this meeting. I wanted to let the board know that the county's website redo is now live. And if you go to the county's website, you can see that. I think it's graphically superior to the old website and has some user features that will make it a little bit more convenient. I think it's still a little bit of a work in progress, and we have some things to improve upon, but I think it's great and a vast improvement over what we had before. This in some ways is related to the discussion about COVID, but I wanted to bring this up, and the commissioners may have seen this, but in case you did not, I was perusing some material from NACO and have been trying to follow as best as possible the package that is being considered in Washington, D.C. For COVID recovery or COVID funding. And within the detail, Hood River County was identified as potentially receiving $4.5 million+ in a community development block grant. Obviously, that funding package has a long ways to go as it navigates through Washington, D.C., but that is a pretty significant amount of money. I don't have any detail in terms of the strings attached to it other than it was reported out that it would be in block grant format. And then lastly, we received some information from the census that shows that they've released what are referred to as shape files, and that was referred to Mike Schrinkel. I'm bringing this up because as board members are aware, the county is overdue to take a look at the commissioner district boundaries and whether or not the population contained within those boundaries is equal or appropriate. And getting those shape files in place within the GIS system is one of the steps. We need to await the population numbers. And the reason I'm bringing this up is at some point, probably in the near future, I'll need to be in front of the board asking to establish a process whereby we go through and assess whether or not we're where we need to be in terms of those district boundaries and the populations contained therein. But I wanted to let you know that that has not been lost or forgotten and will need to come up again in the immediate future. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Jeff, do you have any timeline on that census information and the redistricting?
You know, I tried to find that as best I could through the census website, and it looks like that stuff, it'll be somewhere around summer. And they're very clear to indicate that the dates that they publish are subject to change. You know, in one place I saw April, in one place I saw May, in one place I saw June, in one place I saw July. So, and they may have been referring to different things. So somewhere between April and July, I'm hoping we'll have some of those population numbers.
If you recall, Congress extended the time that the Census Department had to process that. They opened and then closed and then reopened the window for counting. So that was all kind of messed up. So it's not surprising if they're a little confused as to the dates.
So we're not looking at doing this by the May elections. We're hopefully or maybe getting it done by next fall.
Yeah, I would think within the calendar year. assuming we get the population numbers.
Right.
Our elections aren't in May of this year. They're in May of even numbered years, aren't they? Oh, no, it's, but yeah, they're an even number. So it would be May of 2022.
Yeah, for the commissioners, yeah. Okay. Any other questions for Jeff?
Yeah, I have a question about the sheriff's, that little spreadsheet you gave us on the sheriff's analysis, Jeff. So just to make sure I understand what I'm looking at, it says that the capacity exists to hire the administration position that was budgeted. It's unclear as to whether it exists to hire the unfilled deputy position. Can you clarify when you say that the capacity exists to hire the administrative position? I'm presuming that you wouldn't say that if we weren't in a position to support that for next fiscal year also. This is, in other words, this is a sustainable statement. Is that correct?
No, I would not say that. I cannot tell you what the budget looks like next year until I do the budget. Is it my belief that it's sustainable? I believe so. But can I tell you that with absolute certainty? No. I would not be willing to say that.
So would you be advising caution in filling that position as the budget process goes on? Or is your level of confidence high enough that, that you're suggesting that the sheriff go ahead with that process?
I believe the sheriff should move ahead with that process and fill that position. That was one of the positions that was identified specifically with the 5-year public safety local option levy. So I think it's important that that position be filled. In my mind, these positions, it's a function of timing as much as anything, and the sheriff has been very flexible in terms of the timing. And I think that benefits the county as a whole.
Thank you, I agree.
So Jeff, this is Karen. Is that vacant deputy position also one of the positions identified in the levy?
It depends on how you want to look at it. So the levy spoke to filling, if I remember right, in the one, not the measure itself, but in the explanatory statement or the longer, I'm not sure I'm using the right words. I think it talked about filling vacant positions in order to fund patrol. So in that sense, and it is an existing vacant position. It's not a new position. In the measure itself, I believe there was some discussion about adding specific positions. This is not one of those. But to be real honest with you, I would need to go back and reread all of that stuff. It's not fresh in my mind.
So I think that I understand you to say this is an existing position that has been existing prior to the passage of the levy. It just happens to be vacant.
Correct. Yes. My sense of this position is that there's capacity to fill this one as well. And if everybody were to look at the sheriff's budget in total, not just the personnel services, you would probably see that there's capacity there to move forward with this. But right now, the numbers that were provided were just for personal services, and to move forward with the executive assistant position or administrative assistant position.
So
Any other questions for Jeff?
You're not looking for any kind of action on this. This is an information only.
This was a follow-up. The board provided direction to staff, and in our due diligence, there was an issue raised about the hiring of these positions based on the capacity in the budget in light of the binding arbitration settlement. And so to follow through on the board's direction, an analysis had to be done as to whether or not there was capacity to fill these positions. And I had mentioned at the last meeting that I felt there was capacity, and there was a request for the numbers specifically. So I wanted to put the numbers in the packet to provide that information for the commissioner's review. It was provided that shows that there's capacity to fill the position.
Any other questions for Jeff?
I think you said this, but it's the sheriff's decision that the administrative position is a higher priority than filling the open deputy position. Did I get that correct?
It would be the sheriff's decision.
Thank you.
I see that Sheriff English is on. Sheriff English, would you like to comment on this or give any report at this time?
No, I think Jeff was correct on the vacant deputy position. That's the one that's existing. As far as prioritizing, that wasn't ever posed to me. We had to put that deputy position on hold in the fall based on we wanted to see impact on budget and things like that. So we had moved forward with the executive or the admin assistant position, and so we were well into hiring on that already in the early winter. So we were on hold with the deputy position. If you remember correctly, we had a potential to fill that position with a certified officer from another agency, but then there became a question about budget capacity, so we put that on hold. So we're just in a holding pattern on that.
Any questions for Sheriff English?
Just to make sure that I'm understanding, Sheriff, you're not suggesting that you would prioritize this differently if you're making a decision today, are you?
Well, basically the priority happened because of the hiring process. We were well along with the executive or with the administrative position, and the deputy position we had to put on hold. So at this point, we would have to restart the hiring process because that certified officer is no longer available. So we'd have to start from square one, and we were already well down the road with hiring for the administrative position. So and it is a priority, with backlogs and things like that, concealed handgun licensing records, et cetera. It's a definite need.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Matt? Thank you, Matt. Okay, now commissioners' reports. Commissioner Babbitts.
Okay, I get to go first. Let me pull up my notes. Sorry. So I inherited a whole bunch of committees from Commissioner McBride, and I have attempted to get off and running on this. I have been fully read into two of my assignments. The first one being MCAC, Mid-Columbia Community Action Council. I had a lengthy meeting with the executive director as well as the chair. And they sort of got me up to speed. And then that same day I was able to go to my first board meeting. And I did so. And it's, I will spare you the details, but I will say that I am extremely impressed by the quality of the staff and the commission. And I think we're being well served by this group. And we are in the prioritization process right now. I filled out a questionnaire on the county's behalf. And next Tuesday, I believe it is, we're having our strategic planning session. So probably have more to talk about after that. I'm also on the board for the Mid-Columbia Housing Authority, and Joel Mattson read me in on that. So I think I'm pretty much up to speed, and I believe it's next Monday that I'll have my first board meeting for the Mid-Columbia Housing Authority. So that's where I am on my committees. I have a few other assignments which have not yet hit.
Any questions for Arthur? Thank you, Arthur. Commissioner Benton.
Yeah, so the first item is last week on Wednesday, the Bi-State Bridge Working Group met, and there was we had a P3 panel, which is the public-private partnership that we were referencing earlier. And the panel included members of the private sector, people that do these, or companies that do P3 projects, like the bridge project, as well as some individuals from the public sector who are, consultants and people from state agencies who have also been involved in these type of projects. I want to really thank Commissioner McBride and Mayor McBride for pushing very hard to get this panel together. They have been vocal through the last, ever since he's been on there, but specifically over the last several months to really get this panel together. It's my understanding, and I haven't been to a lot of meetings, only a handful over the past few months, but it's my understanding that the Port had previously been really pursuing traditional routes, and it was really nice to finally have this meeting and hear industry professionals give their take on what they feel like they could do. And in my opinion, it was very promising. After sitting through several meetings prior to this, I was extremely discouraged about the possibility of a bridge getting done anytime in the future. And like I'd said, 20 years is the number I've kind of used. I think that, in my opinion, if we were to go the P3 route, we actually could get a bridge sometime within the next 10 years. And that's completely off of my, just my experiences listening to these folks talk. But, I'm really glad that we were able to finally get that group together, because I think it was eye-opening for other folks on the committee too, to hear from these people who have done this. And I'm if nothing else, I'm more excited to attend meetings, and there's hope, I think, that we can have a bridge. We have a debrief tomorrow on everything that was discussed, so we'll see if other folks feel the same way. It's possible that I'm by myself, and everybody else feels like it was not worthwhile, but in my opinion, like I said, it was really valuable, and I'm hoping that the rest of the group feels that way. I think we should absolutely see what opportunities exist through that route. To Commissioner Joplin's point, it is interesting because we're a bi-state working group on looking at replacing the bridge, but we don't deal with any of the day-to-day dealings of the Port Hood River. So nothing we talk about at the committee is, with respect to the development of Lot 1 per se. It's touched on with respect to, staging area or whatever, but we don't have any discussions about the specific dealings of the port. So it was really nice to have Arthur bring that up at the meeting today, because I think that's going to, it can inform the discussion tomorrow. If we are looking at really looking into the potential of a P3 project, we do need to know a little bit more about what the plans of the port are for Lot 1 and for any development that would encumber the bridge. So, but anyway, like I said, a great meeting last week, and one that has really got me excited to be involved in the group, and really hoping I can come back with a better report next month with more information about where the group where they desire to go. So that's what I've got to report on the bridge group. The next one is Norcor, and the big item at Norcor, we're starting the budget process coming up, which is always exciting. But the real big item is the management structure, which I've been discussing for the past, ever since we've changed to this team management structure. It's working very well, and there's some hesitance to move away from it. We've actually made the decision to extend it for another year because it is functioning so well. All of the partners seem to be really liking the way that it's structured, and by partners I mean all of the sheriffs and the juvenile directors like the new structure the way it is, even though it's not sustainable. And so we're really trying hard to come up with a creative solution for the future management. And I'm going to bring that back to all of you when we finally land on it, because it's likely that it may not be 100% traditional, but the structure of Norcor isn't traditional anyway, because of the statutory powers that the sheriffs have. It creates these awkward situations with respect to management of the facility. But the good news is everybody is really willing to come to the table and being open about discussions, and they're what isn't there is any emotion, frustrations, the things that existed at Norcor have existed in Norcor often in the last several years, which are these the bickering and stuff that would happen between different individuals. everybody's working together to try to come up with a solution. And so everybody, I know that the management team as well as the board were really enjoying this improved relationship. And I should also comment that even the general public has really, I think, enjoyed that too. We've got a really good relationship with them, trying to be as transparent as possible. And it's really evident by the number of people that attend meetings. And I've said that before, but it's really nice to have every single meeting not be a community organized event where it's just, there's a line of people ready to speak and have it be crazy. So that's been wonderful. But yeah, the management team component, like I said, we're making progress, but because we're up against the budget cycle and because everybody's happy with it, we're kicking the same management team for another year down the road. Everybody's agreed to stay, we do what they're doing, and hopefully be able to have some specifics to bring back within the next couple months on how we look to adjust things. And that's it. That's the main two items.
Questions for Bob?
I've got one. Bob, so Norcor is a big chunk of our budget, and it's a chunk that we don't have a lot of, we have some control over, but we're not the only people with control over it. How comfortable are you with, are we in good shape for this budget season?
So the management team is just getting started on that. I asked them at my last, I attended the last management team meeting last week with them. And thank you for asking that, by the way. I forgot to bring that up. And I believe that they are budgeting for a 4% increase over last year. And they haven't got all the numbers together and everything, but preliminarily moving forward, that is what we gave them direction of. And we created that kind of process last year. It was the first time we'd have any sort of a budget resolution. And that was where we landed last year. So we haven't had our first budget committee meeting yet. That's going to, I believe, happen next month. And we're going to set that at our February meeting this Thursday. But 4% more than the last budget is what they're planning on bringing back to the budget committee as far as a balanced budget goes.
So overall, you're comfortable that the management process is in place that should lead to reasonable resolution?
Resolution of
reasonable budget, a budget we can live with.
Yeah. So last year, that's what we were able to bring back, which was the first time that had happened in a while. And I stressed to the management team the importance of that and how much easier it made it to do, how much easier it made it for the counties to do our jobs and not having that be just a wild card number that ended up generally being a 6-figure chunk that we didn't expect coming. So that's what the direction is. So that's the budget we're expecting to get back. Now that could change when I dig into the numbers, but we did have some turnover at the financial director position this year. But so far, because of that, the changes are positive. So I'm not really too concerned about it. But anything could happen. It's Norcor. It has a history, but I'm hopeful that we will be able to stick to that increase.
Thank you.
Commissioner Joplin.
Thank you. A couple of things. The Columbia Gorge Health Council had a robust conversation around vaccinations and the systems in place to implement vaccination clinics and such. And the Health Council funded a vaccine educator position, and that position is based at the health department and works side by side with our county COVID response coordinator, Darren. And the vaccine educator is really working on outreach, educating Oregon Health Plan members on the safety and importance of the vaccine to try to debunk any misinformation there may be about getting a vaccine. So there's some multi-language information being communicated to our Oregon Health Plan members in our community, which is about 12,000, well, between Hood River and Wasco. So maybe half of that, a little less than half of that probably for Hood River. And then Center for Living. It's interesting to me recently, as I still am challenged at Center for Living with what I have shared with you before, some of the budget challenges that Center for Living is experiencing. It's reminiscent of some of the conversations that we've had before with other entities like Mid-Columbia Council of Governments and with NORCOR, where the funding for operating certain programs or projects remains stagnant year after year, but the operational costs for the entities continue to rise. And Center for Living is experiencing that same thing. The funding resources for the state required programs for community mental health and some of the federal required programs for community mental health, the funding has remained stagnant and in some cases has even reduced. But the operational costs for Center for Living, of course, grow year by year as all operational costs, including personnel, grow. So I've shared with you before that the reserves are kind of at critical levels, and my concerns are deepening. So I am going to start having a conversation with Lisa, County Council, and probably with Jeff around what really is Hood River County's obligation to Center for Living as a community mental health provider, and the obligation that we agreed to under the original G190 agreement. And it was many years ago. It was when there were not very many agencies in Hood River or Wasco that had capacity to provide behavioral health services and programs, and the environment has changed. There are a number of agencies in both communities that would have capacity or maybe would be interested. So I think it may be time for me to take a look at what some of those obligations are for the county, what really is going to be the best future around sustainability for providing community mental health programs. And there's a required batch of programs that counties are required to provide, and you can contract out for them, or like we did, we created a G190 specific to do so. You can do them in-house, which many counties do. You can part them out piece by piece, which many counties do. So I think I'm going to begin some of those conversations. The financial sustainability of Center for Living is definitely in question. And with COVID hitting and the reduction of fee-for-service type services that were funding and kind of carrying some of the other programs significantly reduced over the last year, it's been kind of an additional detriment to the budget. So just a little bit of a kind of forewarning there, and I think we're potentially going to learn a little bit about community mental health and how other counties provide those services around the state. Thank you.
Any questions for Karen? Thank you, Karen. Commissioner Perkins.
Thank you. First, Mr. Chair, I realize I need to actually declare a conflict of interest that I just slipped my mind in the beginning. We have the FID IGA in the consent, and so that item should probably be pulled, or I will just abstain from the entire consent agenda. So, few things. MCED, we've had quite a few load administration board meetings lately. It's interesting to see businesses that are expanding and looking to the future to grow. So we've been getting money out to businesses that are looking to expand and looking down the road. So it's always fun. It's a fun part of being on the MCED board. It's always hopeful to me. Energy Council, we've got lots of projects still moving forward, lots of resilience focused projects. The one item that we added to the agenda tonight was just a House bill that was coming through that I know the city of Hood River is considering. So the Energy Council had asked to have it put forward to the county. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. On the CREA board, which is an interesting organization made up of multiple counties. Hood River is one of the founding members of it. I'm the chair at CREA, and there's lots of interesting stuff happening with energy around the state, and there's several bills that are moving through the House and the Senate, and so lots of activity there, helping shepherd a few of them along. But it's going to be a very, very busy session. The thing that's probably taken more of my time than anything else is serving as AOC Public Safety Co-Chair. So I got not sure how I got roped into that, but I've been learning a lot about funding and public safety, corrections, a lot about mental health. So Commissioner Joplin was talking about that. One of the issues that keeps coming up is that there's a lot of bills coming through that are shifting funding around, and some of them having to do with looking at how we're funding public safety in general. And so there's money being moved from some pots and into others, and there's some fairly big effects in particularly around community corrections funding. And it's been interesting for me to kind of learn how that funding has played through, how, you know, some funding for certain programs backfills funding in other programs. And mental health is always a big part of all of these pieces, and trying to figure out how to serve folks with mental health issues and keep them, you know, out of the jail system. So there's just, I'll try to bring you all a list of the bills that we're really focusing on. I'll send that to Chair Oates before our next meeting. There was one bill in particular that's the school resource officer bill that basically it would not allow school resource officers in the state of Oregon. And in AOC, that was quite controversial. The eastern counties all basically, you know, said, or the more rural counties all basically said, hey, we've got programs that are functioning. We're not like an urban county. We have different needs and issues. Don't take this tool away from us. And the urban counties were very adamant that they want to see it go away from the entire state. So at AOC, we opposed that. I did invite some of the urban commissioners to come out to Hood River to sit down with the school district and our school resource officer and sheriff, and just learn a little bit about why, you know, it can be a functional program in areas. So I think that's about it on my end. But it's just been a steep learning curve, and I find that I now end up sitting in, as I know Commissioner Joplin has done in the past, the AOC day is 8 to 10 hours of Zoom meetings in that day. And so I'm really tired of being on Zoom meetings by the end of that day.
Questions for Les?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
I have a question about committee assignments. So it's my understanding that Commissioner Joplin, Sheriff English, and myself are on a committee which we recently formed, I guess, to talk about facilities with the City Council, Hood River City Council. Are we waiting for, is someone else calling that meeting, or do we call it, or anyone have any idea what's actually going to happen there?
Jeff, you got any idea?
I can report out that the city manager and myself have spoken about this, and at last check, they were going to have a meeting to see who they were going to have represent the city, and we had a discussion about getting the meeting set up and potentially having a facilitator involved.
Great. So in other words, we should just hold tight.
Okay. Les, when I talked to you the other day and found out how many hours you'd been spending on the Zoom meetings, I was surprised. I thought I was the only one doing that stuff. So anyway, thanks for doing all that. I know everybody's really starting to get into this stuff, and it's a lot of things going on. But anyway, thanks for all that work. Okay, neat. One is we had after our last board meeting 2 weeks ago or whatever it was, I went right into our Act 1 ODOT meeting, and they gave us the information back from the 2024-2027 STIP funding allocation workforce. And there were a couple of things I needed to go over and let you know what happened. The Oregon Transportation Commission approved $255 million in non-highway funding for bicycle, pedestrian, and transit programs. It's a record level and an increase of nearly $100 million. Our fix-it funding and our taking care of the highways has gone down. Even though we still have significant dollars that go to those processors, we took about a 20% hit because of the money being transferred to these other programs. The Oregon Transportation Commission pointed out that they thought that we would have probably 20% worse roads in conditions because of our lack of funding for the fix-its and the maintenance programs. They wanted to remind us that when we do maintenance, it makes our costs a lot better to take care of the roads. But when we do away with maintenance, you get to the point where you got to do more fix-its and it costs you a whole lot more to take care of the roads. So they were concerned about that, and they said that that's probably what's going to happen in that 24 to 27, 2024, 2027 group. And they also said that ODOT expects the condition of the aging bridges and pavement to deteriorate over the course of these 4 years. Just a heads up, that's coming. Couple other things. One, a little more of a personal thing. Somebody who's been somewhat known as the mayor of Odell died yesterday morning. For you that know him, knew him, Butch Gehrig from Gehrig Chevron there in Odell. And that was quite a shock. He was kind of the main person for the downtown Odell because his station's been there for generations. But anyway, just to bring that up, it was a sad day for Odell. Last on my list was, and Les had brought this up recently too, about the forest severance tax proposals. And I talked to you, I believe at our last meeting, about that I'd gone to a presentation on it and I started looking into it. And I'm trying to stay on top of it because I think it could have some ramifications, either good or bad or both, depending on how it's worded. I've talked to Representative Williams and Senator Thompson and told them to please, as these bills come forward, to let us know what they are and give us a chance to pipe in on them. I want to get the information to Doug. The one that I went to was talking about taxing the county timber harvest as well as all the other timber harvests in the county, and then returning 60% of those funds that they take to the property taxes. Well, if you look at our property taxes, you realize that that's a little bit of a problem because there's a whole lot of our property taxes that do not go to county governance. County governance is a fraction of our property taxes. Then they were going to maintain 5% for enforced best forest practices and 20% to watershed infrastructure and 15% for emergency preparedness and fire hazard zones. Anyway, it was concerning to me. Doug, I know you're on the call. Do you have any comments about where we're at on? Have you gotten any information back from either of those people yet?
Yeah, sorry, Mike. I did look at this a little bit, some of the information that you shared. You know, I have not dived in real deep on it. However, you know, looking at the basic information that you provided and found, you know, I would agree that, you know, this is just going to reduce our revenue. I mean, and the taxes aren't, I think the intent of this was to benefit the counties and get more revenue to the counties. But in our case, and a few other counties that have their own forest land, it definitely has the potential to give us a hit here. And Mike, you already kind of explained that. I mean, they're going to put a tax on, and then only a small percentage actually ends up going back to the county. So, you know, whether it's, you know, I don't know the exact percentages, but whether that's a 2% reduction or a 4% or a 5% reduction in that forest revenue, when it's all said and done, that's still a pretty big number when you're making, you know, $3 or $4 million a year. So, yeah, I think it's definitely something to pay attention to, and I like the idea of potentially exempting counties from that. The counties that that have their timber, they would be exempt from that tax. Maybe there's potential there. One other thing that I did find and hear about is that a couple of these House bills actually eliminates Oregon Forest Resource Institute funding as well. And they do a lot of public education and things like that related to forestry and forest management. And they also really promote sustainable forest management in the state. And so that would be a really big change. So some of the things that are being proposed really do turn some things around in terms of funding in the forestry realm of things, and specific to Hood River County, it does seem to reduce our revenue stream from what I've seen so far.
Look at the other side of this, though, Doug. If they did this process that exempted county forest lands, but it does do the private, state, and federal, isn't it possible that it could be a revenue source for the county as well?
It is possible that could help mitigate, I guess, the loss part of it, but that's kind of undetermined, and that's relative to what else, at least in our county, is being harvested. So, you've got Hood River County is the second largest landowner, but they're very distant. Of course, the federal land, you've got about 70% ownership of forest land. Hood River County, you're at about 11. And then you've got industrial landowners and small private landowners that are pretty close to the rest of that, 18 or 19%. So, and split fairly close between small private and industrial. Well, a big chunk of that industrial has been cut over pretty well. So it'll be a number of years, I expect, before you really see, the kind of numbers we saw over the last 20 years coming off that land. You'll start to see that diminish, I think, over the next few years. And then who knows how much the federal lands are going to have harvested as well. A lot of that 70% forest land in Hood River County is not land that's going to be harvested. It's wilderness and things like that, very high percentage. And so, there's only going to be so much harvest probably on that federal land as well. And that's a big question mark. I can't give you a good estimate on what that would be. But it's probably not a whole lot more than what we're harvesting either. So that's something I can try to dig up some more numbers on if I can, and look into a little bit. But, at a glance, I think it's going to end up costing the county. And there are some uncertainties there. I think it would be wise to try to push for getting the county exempted if we can.
Okay, a couple things follow up on that, Doug. One, the organization that gave the presentation that I went to get all the information I could, it's called Timber Tax Fairness Group. And when I asked him about, the deal with Hood River County they said, well, most counties don't have forests like that. We really didn't have you guys in mind, which I believe it. The other thing is, once they start coming up with these proposals in more detail, if we could get that information back from Senator Thompson or Representative Williams and go through it, maybe we can get a better idea, look at the numbers, see how will it really affect us. But I think we really need to keep on top of this. It could be okay, it could not be okay, or we may want to ask for an exemption for county forest lands. Les, you kind of brought this thing up too. Do you have some information or questions or anything?
Yeah, so I've been attending the AOC Natural Resources Subcommittee meeting, which is where this has been discussed. And so if you want to know more about the bills that are coming through, you should attend the AOC Natural Resources Subcommittee. They go into great detail on all of these. And then you have, you automatically are able to vote on whether or not we're supporting or opposing bills from the AOC. So you get to have a say at AOC, and it's important because there's not a lot of counties that own timber, so our voice is fairly important there. So that's definitely a good place. Lauren Smith is the lobbyist that works for AOC, and she's really good. That's who sent me the the position paper, but she can also, if you want to talk to her and ask her to dive into specific aspects of the bill, she can. I talked to Senator Thompson this week as well, and he said he'd be happy to put in an amendment that exempts counties. We need to think about that and whether or not because we're one of only a couple counties that has timber. We may or may not be successful in getting enough support from other counties to do that. But the other piece of this is that the devil's advocate side that I've heard and has been expressed at AOC is that if everybody is taxed the same, then it shouldn't be impacting your revenue because everybody's being taxed the same. And so it should impact all timber prices the same in Oregon. Well, there's only a certain amount of margin on timber, so it's likely to push down the total bid prices. So I don't know if that's entirely true. The big pushback from most counties was that historically, when this tax was in place, the money all returned to the local community and nothing went to the state. And that now the state's wanting to put its fingers into something that was historically used to support the communities that the timber came out of. So that's the real pushback from most counties, is that as always, the state looks for ways to extract money from pots of funding that had historically been reserved for the local communities.
Les, why would the counties that don't have any county forest care if the ones that did were exempt?
Because it's horse trading and political capital. So you're figuring out what bills you support and don't support, and you're negotiating on other bills that matter more to you than that. And so they may or may not support an exemption. It may or may not be a big deal. And so doing an exemption might fly right through. It might receive significant opposition. It's always who's trading what for what. What are you negotiating away over here so you can gain something over here?
Yeah. I'm a little concerned there may be some underlying reasons for some of this process that we're going through, that we want to have a little bit more state control over what's happening in all the forests, even including the counties, which I don't think we need any help personally. We do pretty darn good.
Well, I do think Les kind of hit the nail on the head there. It is a way for some of that funding to kind of be siphoned away from the county just by having control or a say in kind of what get divvied up to go where. I will add that I did talk to several other county foresters in Oregon so that they're aware. And I think even amongst themselves, some of them had already been having some discussion. So that includes Josephine, Coos County, Douglas County, and Clackamas County. They all have forest land and get a substantial amount of revenue, so it does matter. I do think, and we talked about this, a county like Coos County potentially could see a benefit because it's such a high productivity county. Harvest is on private lands is a huge number there, and so a county like that potentially could see some benefit, but until you really have all the numbers to go with that and figure out what's really going where. I think Mike really pointed out a really good thing is that if it goes into property taxes for Hood River County, there's so many special districts and such that the county itself really doesn't get a very big piece of that. So much of it goes elsewhere. So that's a whole nother consideration.
Okay. Any other questions for Doug or myself on this?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think this is an area that has, especially I'm talking about the timber severance tax, has a lot of political implications. I suspect that we all have opinions on this, and I'm wondering if we could schedule some discussion of it, whereby we could figure out if we have a consensus amongst the Board of Commissioners as to what our goals are and what we're trying to accomplish, and kind of where we as a group fall on this. Or did I miss that? Did that happen before the beginning of the year?
No,
this has
been dropped. So yeah, these are all new and still emerging. So
yeah,
because I certainly have opinions on this. I've been following this pretty closely for some time now, and I'll point out there was a comment made about the Oregon Forest Resources Institute and the desire to remove funding from them. And in case you missed it, in the last election cycle, they stepped in a big pile of deep doo-doo. And so this is kind of a natural response to that. While Chair Oates identified the positive things they do, I think that they made a serious mistake, and that's apparently why they're facing some pretty harsh pushback from the legislature.
What I would like to do is I'd like to keep eyes on this and get the information from either the AOC or through the Senator Thompson and Representative Williams. And when we get that, take a look at it with Doug and come up with the numbers and see how it's going to affect us, so we know what we're talking about. And then, you know, before we do anything, before I ever, you know, ask senators to put in an exemption or anything, we definitely go through it with the board. But at this point, I'm just trying to get all the information so we know what we're talking about. Does that sound fair?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I would just say it would be probably incumbent on us to know as much as we can about the bill, and we should be making recommendations to Representative Williams and to Senator Thompson as to what we would like, because they're tracking a ridiculous number of bills.
Oh, God.
And this would just be one. And so it behooves us to be the experts on the bill and be able to give them input.
Okay. And you say the AOC can do a good job of when those things come through, they can find them for us and get them to us, because I tried to look through that today. There's thousands.
Yeah, you have to have
that.
Yeah, you've got to have a specific bill tracker. So, you know, AOC has their bill trackers on specific topics. And so just like Oregon Water Resources Congress tracks all the water bills. So that's what that subcommittee does. And they highlight all those bills that have implications. And so that's why attending that during legislative session is important. And it needs to be, you know, probably a couple of us attending, and anybody who attends gets a vote. So that's also important.
Okay, I'll try to do that.
It seems from what Commissioner Perkins just said that we should be playing a more proactive role, and rather than waiting to see what comes out of the process, we should decide what we want to come out of the process and start promoting that.
Yes. Yep.
Okay, so, but do you know yet whether we really want to be asked to be exempt for the county forest land?
No, and that's what we need to understand the bill, and part of that, you know, Doug really needs to be able to take a look, and then we all need to just have a better understanding. If it's something major that's going to impact us, we need to be able to read that bill and track as amendments are made and as it's going through the hearings. It will change. So, you know, what was dropped is not going to be what it looks like 2 weeks from now. It's going to look different. And that's because there's people like us who are reading the bill and giving input through their representatives to alter it to the way that they want to see it.
Yeah. Okay.
So I also have a question on the ODOT discussion you had, Mr. Chairman. Am I correct? Did you say that the repair and the maintenance budgets are in the same, are treated the same at ODOT?
No. There's a fix-it, there's maintenance, there's a couple other subgroups, but they are kind of in their own subgroup, and they were just comparing what's happened to that total process versus the total budget, and it's being reduced, and the other section I was talking about, it's being increased.
So I'm sorry, what was it that went down by 20%?
The amount in those areas of maintenance and fix-it, and there's another one.
Okay, so they all went down 20%.
Right.
I thought you were talking about one budget item. You're saying all of them.
No, these are subsections. There's a lot of difference between maintenance and fix-it, and there's a safety section too, and all those are kind of in the keeping everything going for keeping the roads where they need to be for proper use and safety and usable, and not getting them too deteriorated to the point where instead of just maintenance, you got to fix them. Anyway, it's just, you know, it isn't going to change. This is what it is. I was just letting you know what it is.
No, I understand. I'm just trying to understand it. But the dissonance is that what I thought you said was that these areas went down so that the non-vehicular and bicycle in transit number could go up, but the size of the increase in the transit number is nothing like 20% of the budget for all the rest of the ODOT stuff.
No.
So really what we're looking at is a decrease in ODOT's budget overall, but somehow they managed to protect and slightly expand the one area.
No, not slightly.
No. Largely, okay.
Not slightly. It went up by 50%.
And this is because of a new director? Is that what we're seeing? The director's priorities, or is this the governor's
No,
priorities?
not from the director. It came from all the individual subgroup artists to do. So most of them not from Eastern Oregon, but the rest of them. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, that's it for reports. Next up, work session action items. Would you guys like to take a quick break? You guys, does anybody need a break? No? Okay. Under work session action items is the 2021 list recommendation Jessica gave us here earlier this evening. Any comments or questions or deliberation on that list? How do you commissioners want to proceed on this?
Chair, I'll make a motion to adopt the prioritized list of 2021 economic development projects for incorporation to the updated regional comprehensive economic development strategy.
Second.
Any discussion? Commissioner Joplin? Okay, Commissioner Perkins?
Yes.
Commissioner Benton?
Yes.
Commissioner Babbitts? I think we lost Arthur. The chair votes yes. I don't know what happened to Arthur.
He just said that he's frozen and that he votes yes. I don't know if that's official or not. We probably should wait until he gets back.
Are we supposed to believe you, Bob? He's working on getting back on, I think.
I don't know. Yeah, let's hang out for a minute.
Okay.
He said he needs to reboot his computer, so.
Oh, man.
Give me a minute. What timing?
Okay, it just makes sense that we take a break here, guys. Let's take 7 o'clock. Let's take a 5-minute break. Does that work? 5 minutes after 7, we'll see if Arthur's back. So I have a question for you. Lisa?
I just got unmuted. What can I do for you?
We have a situation with this consent agenda where we want to take one thing off the consent agenda, put it separate because Les has a conflict of interest. And then we had something that we were adding to the consent agenda. Can I add the one that we're adding into the regular part of the consent agenda and take the one that I don't want in there out and do 2 different votes?
Yep. Just move the other into the new business.
And also, do you need to get my vote officially? Did my text vote work?
For you.
I conveyed the message. I don't know how that jives with public meeting law in our charter, but I did my best.
Back in session, I'll vote yes, if that helps.
Just checking out, making sure Bob was telling us the truth. That's good.
yeah, where everything fell apart was at my credibility, Arthur. So I tried to my best. You know, I can only take things so far.
Instead of you.
Okay, at this time, I'm going to move to consent agenda, and it's been asked that we take off of the consent agenda the approve and sign an intergovernmental agreement upon legal review with Farmers Irrigation District related to recreation use and maintenance of the boat ramp at Kingsley Reservoir, because Les has a conflict there. And we will put that under new business and then add to the consent agenda the one that came out here a little later, authorizing Chair Oates to sign a letter of support for HB 2398, which would allow municipalities to adopt a statewide REACH code as the minimum building code to help reduce greenhouse gas emissions in the building sector. So do we have a motion for the main consent agenda with those two corrections?
I'll move to.
One of the reservoirs taken out and the one of the HB 2398 is put in.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda as modified.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Babbitts?
Yes.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mr. Perkins?
Yes.
Commissioner Joplin?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Next up, under new business, first thing is we have a additional consent agenda that for one item, that is approve and sign an intergovernmental agreement upon legal review with Farmers Irrigation District. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
I will second.
Any further discussion? Mr. Babbitts?
Yes.
Mr. Ben?
Yes.
Mr. Joplin?
Yes.
Mr. Perkins?
Abstain.
And Commissioner Oates says yes. Motion passes. Next up on our agenda is new business, timber sale advertising. Recommendation, discuss the opportunity for timber sale on county land acquired through the Meadows Land Exchange. Doug, would you like to give a presentation on this?
Sure, I'll at least just give a real brief kind of overview and some background here. We have here about a year ago or so, we prepared the Koala timber sale, and this is in an area that the county acquired through or from Meadows in the land exchange nearly 20 years ago. And in that last 20 years, the county has not done very many timber sales. In fact, they did a little bit, one small salvage sale, and then one other small leopard timber sale about a year ago was sold as well. Both of those have been completed, and this is a little bit larger, more of a regular large sale for us. Has about 973,000 board feet. We look to get well over $400,000 in revenue, probably a fair amount more if the prices hold what they're doing right now, near record pricing right now. And it's a mature timber stand primarily. Average size is over 21 inches, which is pretty good size for an average. That means you've got some bigger wood out there in your stand as well. There are some forest health issues. We've experienced some mortality over the last few years in this stand, as well as there's a fair amount of mistletoe sprinkled around in the stand as well. And so, you know, it's a good candidate to harvest. And, you know, we've talked about and tracked some of the Meadows Exchange activity over the years. You know, I just basically was told that, you know, you folks wanted to hear this one more time before we actually did it and confirm that this is the direction we can go here. And so that's really all I'm doing. We wouldn't normally you know, we don't always review these on a case-by-case basis, but we're doing that this time. Any questions?
Any questions for Doug?
Mr. Chairman, yes, I'm just to make sure I'm tracking what we're talking about. So in 2007, there was, as part of the wilderness bill, then there was a land exchange part between Mounted Meadows and Cooper Spur ski area. Is this land that the county got as a function of that 2007 exchange, or are we talking about a different exchange entirely?
Doug?
Yeah, this is actually a prior exchange to that, right around 2001, 2002. This was a prior exchange to what happened subsequently, and I think Jeff Hexel might be able to fill in some blanks here too if there's more questions on that.
I was actually on the board. I was on the board when that exchange went through. It was one of the first votes that I took. So yeah, they believe it was 2001.
Well, just trying to understand. I just want to make sure. So this has nothing to do with the exchange, which is now facing some potential legal challenges.
It does, because this is the land exchange part of what got wrapped up. So that land exchange was contested by Valley residents, and so part of that whole process was them agreeing to drop litigation over this land exchange. That was part of the whole deal. So that's how this land is wrapped up in that whole litigation and exchange.
So I guess my question then is to the board is there any reason associated with the current challenges to this land exchange that we would act in any way other than what our forester is recommending?
I think that would be a good question for council.
That's kind of what I'm asking.
So can you hear me?
Yes.
I mean, historically, so these are exchange lands, well, a portion of them that we received from Mount Hood Meadows in the original exchange. It's not part of the pending Mount Hood Cooper Spur federal land trade. These are lands that we received via warranty deed. There are no restrictions on the management of the county's forest land under the terms of the settlement agreement. Thrive has on occasion represented otherwise, which is just simply not accurate. We essentially forestry has held off on laying out any timber sales on the exchange property while the federal case was pending. That case has now been dismissed, and as of February 2nd, I believe the Forest Service has now issued its draft record of decision and the final EIS on the proposed trade. So that's subject to pre-decisional administrative review, which is ongoing now. So in essence, they're, proceeding with the exchange on the exchange timeline. I'm sure you read the article in the Oregonian. Thrive disputes the appraisals. But again, the federal land trade doesn't really have anything to do with these exchange lands, except for the fact that in the event the exchange is not concluded, the state court litigation surrounding the original exchange, which is presently abated, could be reinstated. So that's the relationship.
So the lawsuit was never settled. Essentially, it could reignite if everything else fell apart, but not that we wouldn't own the land.
Correct.
And so I think I understand what was said, but is it legal counsel's opinion that we do not need to consider that land trade dispute in this decision that we're making now, at least from a legal point of view?
There are no legal restrictions on a timber harvest on this land. No.
Thank you. That's exactly my question.
Jeff, is there anything you wanted to add on this?
No, I think that this has been thoroughly vetted.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
So are we going to vote on, or do we need to vote on this since it wasn't in consent? Is that?
Lisa, I'm assuming we don't even need to vote on this, do we?
Well, I think this is one occasion where forestry is actually wanting the board's authorization to proceed with advertising the sale. Correct,
Okay.
Doug?
Correct.
Okay.
So Board Chair, this is on the agenda because the board asked for it to be on the agenda for discussion before the timber sale was advertised. So this is back in front of the board per the board's direction. As Doug had mentioned, we generally don't bring these in front of the board, but there was an obvious reason to discuss this, and so it's, I think, appropriately here. And I think from staff's perspective, we would like a motion to proceed ahead with this sale.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'll move that we advertise the koala timber sale.
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? Mr. Babbitts?
Yes.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mr. Joplin?
Yes.
Mr. Perkins?
Yes.
Votes yes. We will go forward with the timber sale on county land acquired through the Meadows Land Exchange that we were talking about this evening. Next up, administration, courthouse security improvement project. Recommendation is approved moving forward with option A, which is to construct a security station at the entrance of the courthouse. Jeff, you want to make any comments on this?
Sure. I spoke with the board a while back about this particular project in executive session due to a potential property acquisition at the time related to this. Since then, that has changed. But going back even further, the board members might remember that there was discussion when the 5-year local option levy was put together related to this improvement to allow for courthouse security to be placed at the entryway into the courthouse so that we could provide courthouse security, which is done now, but would not be done, it's not done in the same way as what's being proposed. So both the capital expenditure and the expenditure for courthouse security, which is a contracted service, were included in the 5-year local option levy. Since that time, the discussion with the city has occurred as to whether or not there would be a public safety complex, and there was a concern on the part of staff that we spend $150,000 to make an improvement to the courthouse only to potentially turn around and rip the courthouse down or abandon it. And wouldn't that money be better spent elsewhere? And so this has kind of been floating around outside for a while. And I think we're at a point at a staff level where we need to move forward. And given that the courthouse security needs to be done as part of the levy, and given that the conversation with the city about a public safety complex has been extended, I think it's important to move ahead with the improvement. And I don't think at this point it seems like a public safety complex is going to occur anytime too quick. So the event horizon has changed. Where I'm going with this is there was a factor in terms of the cost that was being considered that probably doesn't need to be considered now. And so given that, there were 3 options that were looked at. One was building an atrium on the courthouse, and the cost of that is roughly $187,000. I think that's what's in your packet. We looked at a less expensive option to try to avoid wasting money in the event a public safety complex were going to be built in the near term. And so we looked at cutting a hole in the courthouse, putting a door in, and running it through prevention, which would require prevention to be relocated. And then there was a series of operations that would change around. And while it would be operationally probably better, it was more expensive. So you're looking at the cost of lease space versus the cost of capital. And given that the public safety complex is not likely to occur, it is more cost effective to actually build a more expensive capital improvement and put an atrium or an entryway onto the existing entryway as opposed to cutting a hole in the wall, and move ahead to allow for placement of a security station within that new space. So that's what staff's recommendation is. There's $150,000 appropriated in the budget for this improvement. It will be more expensive than that. But I think it's important to move forward with this improvement to be able to deliver on what was told to the voters that they would get out of the local option levy, which is courthouse security. So that's staff's recommendation, is to move forward with option A, and we will begin to start that process should the board concur.
Sheriff English, you're on the meeting this evening. Would you like to make any comments about this?
No, I mean, I just had a chance to read the administrator's proposal today. I understand the direction. I think we can make that work, and it's easier from a execution standpoint, I guess, to not have to displace a department, and it should give us what we need to implement the screening, hopefully next fiscal year.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Jeff or Matt?
So are we comfortable? I would be comfortable to say that this is going to be lasting for at least the next 5 years. So is it your recommendation that if we get 5 years life out of it, that's enough to make the $150,000 worthwhile? So basically $30,000 a year.
Jeff?
From my perspective, yes, largely because this is something that was defined within the measure, and I think the county needs to follow through and do what it said it was going to do, and this is part of that.
This is Karen. Can you speak to the difference of the 150 allocated out of the operational levy and the 187.5?
We will know the true cost when the bids come in, and that was an estimate that was done by a consultant, and the difference will have to come out of contingency or out of some other appropriation.
Meaning general fund.
That's correct.
So then if you compare option A and B, because you only have 150, and option B would also require 20,000 in lease expense to relocate the department, general fund still takes a fairly equal hit.
Yeah, except that the lease cost reoccurs over time. And so, if you're in there 3 years, the cost of having to lease that space plus the capital improvement is more than just the capital improvement itself.
Any other questions, comments? In looking at the numbers, Arthur, I was thinking it wouldn't even take 5 years to justify going ahead with the full expense. I'm thinking it'd be less than that. 3 years. Anyway.
I guess what I'm trying to figure out, it seems to me like staff is making a clear recommendation that there are multiple ways to proceed that operationally to be the best decision. And if I read that correctly, then I'm perfectly happy to support that decision. But I'm just trying to make sure, because there are a lot of moving parts here. I'm trying to make sure that that's what staff is telling us.
Yes, we're recommending that the more expensive capital improvement be done. And it's largely a cost issue. Operationally, it would be better to lease the space, but from a cost standpoint, it would be far more expensive, particularly if you were looking at a 5-year period of time, which is, in my mind, probable. So it gets pretty pricey.
Got it. Thank you.
So I think it's the cost effective to go ahead and add on to the courthouse to create the security space.
So what occurs if we put this project out to bid and the final costs come in more around 220 or 230?
Well, then we would have to figure out where that money was going to come from, and we would have to do a budget adjustment to accommodate it. So it would have to come back to the board.
Or we could look at other options again.
So really
Or
our
you could
mission
look at
or
other
our
options.
action is to move forward with a bid process, really not to move forward with option A regardless of eventual solidified costs.
You agree with that, Jeff?
I mean, certainly that's a possibility, but I would like the board to understand that, you know, we need to get this done, and this is the best alternative at this point in time. And if it's a couple $100,000, staff's recommendation is to continue to move forward. If it's $275,000 or something, well, then that's going to be different.
Right. So
I mean, you have to do the math.
you're really looking for direction from us to start the bid process, option A.
Yes.
Is there a motion I can make on that? Is that a motion? I move that we start the bid process on option A. We direct staff to start the bid process on option A.
Second.
Any further discussion? Commissioner Babbitts?
Yes.
Mr. Benton?
Yes.
Mr. Perkins?
Yes.
Mr. Joplin?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Next up, equitable transportation funding, ODOT COVID-19 relief proposal recommendation. Discuss county position regarding the proposed split of COVID relief funding. Les, this came through you as well, didn't it? Did this come from AOC?
No.
Didn't come from me.
No, this came from Michael Dewan.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I'm sorry.
I don't see Michael on the call.
He's on as an attendee, so I
Okay.
could unmute him if you would like.
Great. Anyway, this came from Public Works Director Michael Dewan, and the concern is, and it's outlined in the material, is for the COVID relief funding, the transportation COVID relief funding, the state is proposing to change the formula which exists now, which will shortchange cities and counties from what they would get if the historic funding formula was followed. And I think that the ask here is, will the board support communications with legislators to keep the pre-existing distribution formula so that cities and counties get a higher share? And Michael Dewan is on. I think I got that right. Michael, if I'm wrong, please correct me.
This is to the Oregon Transportation Commission. It's not to the legislature.
Yeah, thank you. That's correct.
Chair Oates, this is Heidi. Chair Oates, I moved Michael over as a panelist. He might be just a moment.
Okay. Can you hear us, Michael? Michael, can you hear us? We can't hear you.
I see his mute coming on and off. He probably has a microphone problem.
Chair, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Let me try that again. Can you hear me this time?
Yes.
All right, I apologize for that. Yeah, well, thanks for considering this. This is something that came through AOC and at least the county road program portion of it. That's where I've heard most of it about. But you may be aware that with the COVID relief funding package that Congress passed back in December, There was around $10 billion in highway funding for the different DOTs, and Oregon is expected to receive about 124 million. And I believe that ODOT presented a proposal to the OTC of how they propose to spend that funding. And well, it was not aligned with the usual state highway fund distribution. So there was a lot of concern of spreading those concerns of local government to the OTC. I will say that this may be a moot point. I did receive an email earlier today from the County Road Program that late last week, ODOT apparently approached the OTC or was changing their proposal to kind of even the distribution of how they wanted to spend the money. That about 45% of it would be going to local governments. Regardless, the kind of a form letter has been going around. A lot of the road departments have been asked to bring them to their county commissions as to show support in a common voice to the OTC that would like to see the COVID relief transportation funding be more aligned with how the state highway fund is distributed amongst local governments in the state.
So you're saying, Michael, that they did make an adjustment, but you're still suggesting we go ahead with this letter?
I think it'd be a good idea. I haven't seen the spread of how they're proposing to spend it now. I would just, if you bear with me, I'll read two sentences to you from the email I got from the County Road Program that states, we received good news last week that ODOT is updating its COVID-19 relief funding proposal for local governments to more closely and equitably follow the 50-30-20 state highway fund split. And they're estimating it actually be about 45% rather than 50 going to counties and cities. But regardless, I think it might still be a good idea for the county to voice its concerns and make the OTC aware of how we feel about that split of the money.
Okay. So 45% instead of 50%, but it's a lot closer to what it used to be. I would want to bring up something as we're discussing this. We talked a week or two ago about my signing a letter of support for the Port of Hood River and Port of Cascade Locks. It was going after, I believe, the same pot of money. So it's a little concerning for me to be on two different asks that may be in conflict with each other.
Okay, well, I can certainly understand that. Well, let me find my letter here. Originally when ODOT presented their first proposal to the OTC, they included a letter. I don't know if it was in the agenda or the package tonight, but, a rep from ODOT did state that ODOT projects the state highway fund will lose $225 million through the end of FY21. And if they're estimating the state highway fund would lose $225 million and the total COVID package that would be coming is roughly half that, at least the county road departments, we felt that, well, that should certainly be supplemented into the state highway fund. I don't know if the ports ever see any part of that money. There's a lot of different programs that come out of that. Anyway, I wanted to bring it to your attention, and I totally leave it in your hands, obviously.
Okay. Well, thank you, Michael. I appreciate that you brought that to our attention, since you're on that board with the AOC that got that information. So thank you for doing that. So board, what do you think?
Mr. Chairman, could you refresh our memory on what that letter was concerning the Port of Cascade Locks?
Port of Cascade Locks, Port of Hood River, we're putting in a letter of recommendation or request from Oregon Transportation Commission. It in that bill that had the 124 million for Oregon, part of it reads that it was to help supplement either roads or bridges that use fees for going across them or using them. And so they were jumped on that and were coming up with how much dollars they had lost from COVID for the amount of lack of people going over or being closed, both. And they came up with pretty significant numbers, both close to $1 million. And they wanted to put that information in to the Oregon Transportation Commission. And they wanted a support letter from the county and some other agencies, but yeah. And I brought it before the board and we said, yeah, we would do that. So that's where we're at on that.
But I don't think that letter says which bucket that money should be taken from.
Well, that's the one that they were looking at, that 124 million. I believe. I'm pretty sure that's the case. I know, otherwise it's a heck of a coincidence.
No, but I mean, is it from the 30% to the, to the counties, is it 20% to the cities, or 50% to ODOT?
That I couldn't tell you.
Right. So that's why I'm saying that technically I don't think they're in conflict.
Okay. If that's what you think. I have no trouble with signing them both if you think we're okay with that. But I want to know what
technicality there. I think we can squeak through on that technicality. It seems like kind of a no-brainer to tell the OTC that to see them give 50% locally, even if they're now talking about 45%, that's still a 10% drop for us. So I can't see any reason why we wouldn't say, hey, don't, we understand you're hurting, we're hurting too. Don't keep on putting this on the cities and counties to make your life easier.
Any other comments, board?
I'll make a motion that we sign the letter as presented, or authorize you to sign the letter as presented.
Second.
Any more discussion? Commissioner Babbitts?
Yes.
Commissioner Perkins?
Yes.
Commissioner Joplin? Commissioner Benton?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Thank you, Michael, for the work on that. Appreciate it. Jeff, you as well. Okay, next up. Elected officials compensation. Jeff, you want to make comments to start with?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Within the packet is the selections that were provided by commissioners. And if you look at those selections, and what we're looking for is at least 6 counties that we would compare against. So if you look at those that got the most X's in the sheet, it's Clatsop, Crook, Curry, Lincoln, and Wasco, and then with 3 X's is Tillamook. So if the board is comfortable with that selection, in terms of who we compare against when we do, this is specific to elected officials, when we do elected officials, that's what we will compare against for those positions. As was indicated in the memo provided in the packet and was provided earlier, we also do look at the jobs. So it's not just looking at those. We look at jobs to see if they're comparable as well. But that's what came forward, and staff is comfortable with that if the board is. So I guess I would need to know from the board if you're comfortable moving forward with that.
Could you read that list again? I'm having a little trouble tracking here.
Yeah, what I did is I just went through where the X's were on the matrix that was provided, and so it's Clatsop, Crook, Curry, Lincoln, Wasco. They each got 4 X's, and then Tillamook got 3. So if you were to have 6 counties, you would include Tillamook. And if the board's comfortable with that, that, we'll move forward.
The desire for 6, is that what staff thinks is a reasonable number to do the deep research into?
Yes, needs to be at least 6, because oftentimes you don't always get something that's comparable. And so chances are for commissioners and for the sheriff you would. I just don't know how many have justice of the peace. So that would have to be something that would have to be looked at. But I think this is definitely workable.
This Mike, I'd like to make a couple comments. Those are the 6 counties that after reviewing your input, commissioners, that's what I put down, and then I got some more information. Populations of those 6 counties varies between 23,000 and 48,000. So not a lot of not a huge difference between Hood River County and 25,000. Like industries, all of them had at least one like industry, and a couple of them, Wasco and Clatsop, had a couple like industries. One other thing I looked at, I know Arthur's not crazy about this, but I did look at the cost of living indexes to see where they were at. All these counties had cost of living indexes between 95 and 100 and about 103, which is still quite a bit below Hood River counties. But quite frankly, there was no counties between Baker in population and Benton in population that had a cost of living close to ours. They just don't exist. And so I did want to put those in there so that at least we got, of the counties we looked at between Baker and Benton, at least we got the ones in there that had a cost of living a little bit closer to ours, at least. I think it's important. So I'm happy with those 6 counties that he has listed. Comments from board?
I'm happy with those 6.
Yeah, that's fine with me. I want to apologize for not getting my list in. I did a list. I don't have Clatsop on my list, but it was right, it was on the edge for that one. But I have every other one except for that, including Tillamook on my list.
Okay. Jeff, is this all you want from us, or do you want us to just discuss a few other things that they could use? What do you think?
I think from staff's perspective, this is what we were looking for in terms of our analysis. Again, we will look at the positions, although I'm not sure there'll be that much variation. There might be for the commissioners because it depends on the form of government, but for the justice of the peace and for the sheriff, there's not likely to be much difference. The only other thing that I would throw out there, and this is more for discussion, if you're comfortable with these 6 counties, and I don't know that this needs to be determined right now. I think it can be determined at a future date if the board wants to consider it at all. And I think I may have mentioned this, it is possible if the board is so inclined to take into consideration cost of living, but not in such a way that it alters who you're comparing against. And the reason I say that is because I've worked other places where I have seen boards say, well, we're gonna pay within a certain range for whatever reason, and it could be cost of living. So you could say, well, we're gonna focus in on average to 25% above average is an acceptable range, or 10% above average based on cost of living. Again, I don't think you need to do that right now, but if you were ever to want to take into consideration cost of living, that's one way to do it without changing your comparable counties. So I just throw that idea out there. If that's not a concern to the commissioners at all, then I wouldn't address it a bit.
Well, as I stated a little while ago, I did look at this cost of livings and did pick the ones that were at least more within the realm of where Hood River was, even though they're 20 points below. but didn't go further down than a 95 on those cost of living things. So I took it into consideration a little bit, but I'm very happy with this, that the commissioners came up with the same counties I did anyway. So
yeah, I sliced and diced the data in dozen different ways. At the end of the day, anything we do is going to be imperfect. But what I'm assuming here is that the process that is going forward is we're not just going to take these 6 counties and look for the average of them. Staff is going to do some research. They're going to tell us, hey, this is you think about the way a real estate comp is done. You identify the comps, but then for each of the characteristics, you say, okay, well, this is a comparable home. This is a comparable sale, but the view is better from this house, so we're adding 10,000, and this one doesn't have a garage, so we're subtracting 20,000. I know that there's not something nearly as precise that can be done with this, but I'm expecting we're going to see something like, I noticed the stars there for whether PERS there's a PERS pickup. We're going to see some analysis that says, we started with these 6 communities, and based on that, we're coming up with this recommendation, and this is how those 6 communities fed into making that recommendation. So that's what's going on. I'm good.
I like your appraisal comparison, because at the end of the day, the reality is the house will sell for what somebody will pay for it, and same thing goes with when you put jobs out there.
Right.
Yeah.
You may get that analysis and it's wrong, and you have to pay more, So yeah, I like that.
One other comment I wanted to add on this topic is the information under the memo for October 29th was talking about Charter states members of the Board of Commissioners and the Sheriff shall receive reasonable compensation as determined annually by the lay members of the Budget Committee. That has been changed on the charter to lay members of the Budget Committee plus the chair and the vice chair of the commission. So that is one change that wasn't reflected there. Arthur, I don't know if you knew that or not.
I did not. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, are we happy with that direction then, using these 6 counties? Okay. Do we need to do this by approval of the board?
At this point, I would say no. It may be at some point this needs to be a little more formal even than a motion. Maybe there needs to be a resolution or something like that. So for future boards or future budget committee members, there's some record other than just this conversation, or for that matter, a motion in minutes, some more formal document, just because it's easier to track for historical purposes. But right now, I think it's just fine. We have the 6 comps, and that's what we'll use. And I appreciate the conversation as it relates to some of the other factors. That's helpful to staff as well.
It seems to me that whatever we do, we have to have a defensible process. And I wouldn't mind seeing at some point down the road a memo or memorandum or something that does say that this is the process that Hood River County uses for setting the elected officials' compensation, or at least that this is the process we go through. This is the methodology that we have in place. Otherwise, we're going to have second guessing all the time.
So staff would be, if the board is interested, staff would be happy to draft a resolution with the assistance of counsel and get that back in front of the board.
I think that's a good idea. But I don't think we need to do anything tonight. So, anything else on the regular meeting?
I just want to express my appreciation to the board members for dealing with this and giving staff direction. I know it's taken some time, and I appreciate the board's patience.
And I'm giving Excel lessons if anyone wants any.
Yeah. I appreciate your help too, Arthur. I enjoy arguing with you on these things.
I didn't think we were arguing.
We're not. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. This time I'm going to close the regular business section of the County Board of Commissioners. And we're going to go into executive session under ORS 1926602H and ORS 1926602D labor negotiations. Heidi, yes, I'm going to be talking to you about that AOC stuff so I can get in on that. Okay.
So we're not going back into regular session, right? We're done.
I think I have to come out of here and then I got to close the other meeting.
Okay.
This time I'll close the executive session, come back into regular session, and this time I will close the regular session. We are adjourned.